His father scored 894 NHL goals. He scored 0. Welcome to the harsh reality of NHL bloodlines, where Hall of Fame DNA meets fourth-line reality, if they even make it that far. The National Hockey League has always been a family business. Nearly 200 father-son pairings have appeared in at least one NHL game, and every generation brings a new crop of prospects who share a last name with someone already enshrined in the Hall of Fame or etched onto the Stanley Cup. But for every Matthew Tkachuk lighting up scoreboards like his dad, there are dozens of forgotten sons who prove that greatness skips a generation, or two, or just stops cold. Academic research on the 2005 to 2010 drafts even tried to quantify whether having dad in the show delivers a measurable edge. The authors found only slight possible evidence that sons of former players got an easier path to the league, and virtually no advantage once they were there. The stats don't lie, famous names might get you drafted, but they won't keep you on a roster. Starting with number 17, Lias Andersson shows us what happens when draft pedigree meets reality. The Rangers took him 7th overall in 2017, partly because his dad Nicholas played 165 NHL games and now scouts for the Kings. Remember when Lias threw his silver medal into the crowd at the 2018 World Juniors? Rangers fans remember that, better than his actual NHL production. That moment of frustration captured everything about carrying a hockey surname: the pressure, the expectations, the knowledge that thousands are waiting for you to fail. After 110 games split between New York and Los Angeles, Lias packed his bags for Switzerland. He had elite two-way instincts, scouts said, just not elite enough to secure a full-time NHL job. The Swiss League welcomed him with open arms, but every goal he scores there is a reminder of what could have been in North America. His contract in Switzerland pays well, sure, but it's not Madison Square Garden, and everyone knows it. Number 16 brings us Kieffer Bellows, whose father Brian scored 485 NHL goals and won a Stanley Cup with Montreal. Kieffer went 19th overall to the Islanders in 2016 and posted gaudy junior numbers that made everyone think the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He dominated the WHL with Portland, putting up 41 goals in 2017 to 18. 7 seasons later, he sits at 114 NHL games with 16 goals total. That's what his dad scored in a good month. The Islanders gave him chances, the Flyers gave him chances, the Predators gave him chances. Each team hoped they'd unlock whatever was missing. At 27 years old, Kieffer just signed in Sweden's SHL to reboot his career. He might come back, but the gap between draft day projections and reality already makes him a cautionary tale about banking on bloodlines. His story proves that junior dominance means nothing if you can't adjust to NHL speed and defensive systems. Brian Bellows had that rare combination of skill and hockey sense that translated at every level. Kieffer had the skill, but the sense never fully developed. At 15, Max Iafrate inherited something special from his father Al, that legendary slap shot that once clocked 105.2 miles per hour and terrified goalies throughout the 90s. Max had the bomb too. NHL development camps loved it. Lake Erie and Providence in the AHL signed him for it. Coaches would watch him uncork blasts in practice and dream about power play possibilities. But one elite tool couldn't mask broader deficiencies in his game. The decision-making lagged, scouts said. The defensive awareness never developed. The complete package never materialized. Max bounced between the AHL and ECHL, putting up decent offensive numbers, but never convincing anyone he could handle NHL minutes. He attended multiple NHL camps, came close with several organizations, but close doesn't count in professional sports. Max retired without a single NHL call-up, proving that inheriting dad's cannon means nothing if you can't hit the target or play a complete 200-foot game. Al revolutionized the point shot and became a must-see TV every time he wound up. Max's shot looked the same in warm-ups, but games require more than practice tricks. Brett Sutter comes in at 14, and his story hits different because the Sutter name means dynasty. 6 original brothers, 6 Stanley Cups between them, 6 coaching stints, and a mythology of rural grit that defined tough hockey for a generation. The Sutter family from Viking, Alberta basically colonized the NHL in the 1980s. Daryl's son Brett actually scored in his Flames debut, which is more than some on this list can say. But 60 total NHL games versus 1,090 in the AHL tell the real story. He became the American Hockey League's Iron Man, which sounds impressive until you realize it means he was too good for the minors, but not good enough for the show. Brett played through injuries, led by example, wore the C for multiple teams, and earned respect everywhere he went. Just not an NHL roster spot. Now he coaches Calgary's AHL affiliate, keeping the dynasty alive in management rather than on ice. The Sutter work ethic transferred perfectly. The Sutter skill level at hockey's highest tier, not so much. His uncles Brian and Dwayne combined for over 1,300 NHL games. Brett couldn't crack 100. The Bourque brothers land at 13 and 12, and their combined story shows that failure is relative. Ray Bourque's elder son Chris became one of the greatest AHL scorers ever, with 3 Calder Cups and 6 All-Star selections. His AHL numbers are genuinely elite, 802 games and 756 points. But across 2 decades, he managed only 51 NHL games scattered across Pittsburgh, Washington, and Boston. His brother Ryan, drafted 80th overall by the Rangers, played exactly 1 NHL game on April 9, 2015 against Ottawa before shifting to coaching. That single game saw him go scoreless in just over 5 minutes of ice time. Together they forged substantial professional careers, yet Boston media still frames them as proof that greatness isn't hereditary. Chris could light up the AHL like few others, winning playoff MVP honors and leading teams to championships. The NHL? Different story entirely. The speed, the space, the split-second decisions all moved just beyond their reach. Ray Bourque played 1,612 NHL games and sits first all-time in career points by a defenseman. His sons combined for 52. Jake and Dean Chelios take spots 11 and 10, raised by Chicago legend Chris Chelios, who played until he was 48 years old and logged 1,651 NHL games. Both sons captained Michigan State, which sounds promising until you follow their pro careers. Dean's run ended in the ECHL before transitioning to scouting. Jake squeezed into 5 emergency games with Detroit in 2019, wearing his father's Red Wings jersey but never approaching his impact. Then he embraced a completely different identity as Kunlun Red Stars naturalized Chinese player J.K. Chelios in Beijing. He even represented China internationally at the Olympics and World Championships. They show how second-generation players increasingly chase global options once the NHL door slams shut. Jake found more ice time and bigger roles in Asia than he ever would have gotten in North America, turning his family name into opportunity halfway around the world. Chris Chelios was still playing NHL minutes at an age when most men struggle with beer league. His sons couldn't earn NHL minutes in their primes. The Samuelsson brothers claim 9 and 8, and their stories mirror each other in disappointing ways. Ulf Samuelsson's elder son Philip was a second-round pick by Pittsburgh in 2009, praised for hockey IQ and reach. At 6'2" with long arms, he looked like a modern shutdown defenseman. He logged 13 NHL games before shuttling between the AHL and Europe. Coaches loved his positioning but couldn't ignore his foot speed, the same flaw that eventually ended his dad's career. But Ulf had a Hall of Fame snarl to make up for it, plus 1,080 NHL games worth of tricks and veteran savvy. Philip didn't. His younger brother Henrik went 27th overall to Phoenix in 2012, a first-round pick who seemed destined for better things. He debuted for the Coyotes in 2015, played 3 NHL games, and never scored an NHL point. Not 1 goal, not 1 assist, nothing. By 26, he was bouncing between the British League and Slovakia's second tier before calling it quits in 2020. Scouts who once saw a power forward now use him as a cautionary tale about bloodline scouting and the danger of drafting based on surname recognition. Their father threw over 2,400 hits in his NHL career and made enemies in every building. His sons couldn't hit NHL scoreboards. Number 7 belongs to Jeremy Brodeur, who went undrafted despite having Martin Brodeur's DNA and presumably learning a thing or two about goaltending at the family dinner table. His father won 691 NHL games, more than any goalie in history, plus 3 Stanley Cups and 4 Vezina trophies. Jeremy ground through the Ontario Hockey League with Oshawa, then the ECHL with multiple teams, and the American Hockey League from Binghamton to Charlotte to Utica. But the closest he got to following his father's footsteps was wearing the same organization's jersey in the minors. His brother Anthony was a 7th-round pick by the Devils in 2013 and attended a Maple Leafs tryout. generating headlines about another Brodeur between the pipes. But he spent most of his 20s in Canadian university hockey, playing for McGill and winning academic honors before discovering he was better at golf than stopping pucks. Both brothers speak openly about loving the family legacy, while recognizing that their father's 691 wins, 113 playoff wins, and NHL records represent an impossible measuring stick. Martin revolutionized the position with his puck handling. His sons couldn't revolutionize their way past the AHL. Martin's butterfly style and ability to play the puck like a third defenseman changed hockey forever. His sons played conventional styles that weren't good enough for unconventional results. At 6 and 5, we find the Waugh brothers, sons of the most intense competitor in NHL history. Jonathan was a goalie who once sparked a massive brawl in junior hockey when he jumped the bench alongside his coach father, earning both 7-game suspensions. The incident made international headlines and showed the pressure of being Patrick Roy's son boiling over. Combined with middling save percentages and the weight of expectations, it convinced him to quit hockey at 18 and pursue music. Today he headlines festivals across Canada, selling out venues and topping charts, which counts as success even if it's not the kind Patrick envisioned. His stage presence channels the same intensity his father brought to the crease, just with a microphone instead of a blocker. His brother Frederick captained the Quebec Remparts, wore number 35 like his father, and showed flashes of the family competitive fire. But he topped out at 2 AHL seasons with Rochester before walking away at 23, posting just 20 points in 117 AHL games as a forward, telling the story of a prospect who couldn't make the jump. Their paths show how even modest NHL dreams become suffocating when your surname evokes 4 Stanley Cups, 3 Conn Smythe trophies, and a reputation for legendary competitiveness. Patrick famously told the Montreal media he would win them more cups, then got traded and won 2 in Colorado out of spite. His sons couldn't win AHL starting jobs. Blake Coffey lands at number 4, carrying the weight of Paul Coffey's revolutionary legacy. Paul redefined what defensemen could do with the puck, winning 4 Stanley Cups and finishing second all-time in points by a defenseman. Blake inherited the right-handed shot, but critically not the skating that made his father special. After stops in the Ontario Hockey League with Kingston, the United States Hockey League, the North American Hockey League, and finally the National Collegiate Athletic Association Division III with Hobart College, Blake retired in 2022 without a single professional appearance. Not AHL, not ECHL, not even a training camp invite. The drop-off from major junior to lower levels tells its own story. Analysts note that Paul's game was built on elite acceleration that left forecheckers grasping at air. Blake's average wheels left him exposed the moment the game sped up beyond Junior B. Paul would join rushes and lead them. Blake couldn't keep up with them. When your father scored 48 goals as a defenseman in a single season, anything less than excellence feels like failure by comparison. Lion Messier takes 3rd place, and yes, that's Mark Messier's only son. The weight of that surname in hockey cannot be overstated. 6 Stanley Cups, one of the greatest leaders in sports history, the guarantee in New York. Lion wore number 11 in junior like his father, signed with the Rangers farm system naturally, and managed a handful of ECHL games before transitioning to running skills clinics in Washington, D.C. Teammates said the pressure of being the captain's kid followed him to every rink, every practice, every shift. Opponents admitted they played extra hard against him to prove pedigree meant nothing. One former teammate remembered Lion getting checked into the boards with extra enthusiasm, the opposing player yelling something about sending a message to Mark. When your dad guaranteed a Stanley Cup and then delivered it, when he defined leadership for a generation, anything less than similar heroics feels like failure. Lion found success teaching the game to the next generation, but never playing it at the level his bloodline suggested. Mark Messier's presence could change a franchise's culture. Lion's presence changes youth hockey camps. The Gretzky brothers claim spots 2 and 1, and their stories hurt the most because Wayne Gretzky isn't just hockey royalty, he's the undisputed king. The Great One. The player who retired with 61 NHL records and stats that seem made up. Trevor, the middle brother, drew scouts thanks to a 6'4" frame and raw athleticism that suggested maybe some of Wayne's magic might manifest differently. But he chose baseball, seeing a clearer path away from impossible comparisons. The Chicago Cubs drafted him in the 7th round in 2011. 5 organizations later, he topped out in High A before trying acting in Hollywood. When your father has 2,857 NHL points, more assists than anyone else has total points, switching sports entirely might be the smartest move. At least in baseball, nobody expected him to rewrite record books. Trevor hit .238 in his best professional season, which sounds bad until you realize Wayne probably would have hit .100. But the number one spot belongs to Ty Gretzky, Wayne's eldest son, who had his own Upper Deck Young Guns card printed just in case he made it. The card company was that confident the Gretzky line would continue. He never did make it. After Junior A stints with Shattuck St. Mary's and a brief walk-on attempt at Arizona State, Ty quit competitive hockey, finished a business degree, and launched the Gretzky Hockey School instead. The enterprise thrives, teaching thousands of kids across North America, but on ice, he tops out at Beer League. No scandals, no drama, just a quiet pivot by someone who realized early that a famous last name can't manufacture elite foot speed or NHL hands. Ty understood what many on this list learned too late, that being the son of greatness doesn't make you great. Wayne scored 50 goals in 39 games once. Ty couldn't score 50 in Junior A. These 17 names share common threads that explain why pedigree fails. Skating emerges as the great equalizer, with most sons judged average or worse in acceleration. Modern NHL pace punishes anyone who can't close gaps or create separation, no matter how famous the surname. The game moves faster than ever, and these legacy players consistently couldn't match that speed. Teams sometimes rush legacy prospects to capture marketing buzz, skipping the patient development their anonymous peers receive. Several players admitted privately they weren't ready for their NHL debuts but got thrown in anyway because of their names. The psychological weight crushes some, as multiple players described seeing their family name on opposing whiteboards as motivational fodder. Every mistake got magnified, every benching went viral, and fan forums compared each shift to Dad's highlight reel. One player said he could hear fans yelling his father's stats at him from the stands during games. The game evolved too. Hall of Fame parents dominated with tools like size, toughness, and woodstick slapshots that matter far less today. Their children often trained in the same mold and found those traits obsolete against edgework-driven, analytics-savvy competition. What worked in 1985 doesn't work in 2025. The clutch-and-grab era that made some fathers famous would earn their sons penalties today. And unlike undrafted kids from modest backgrounds, growing up around NHL wealth offered alternative career paths. Ty Gretzky and Jonathan Waugh walked away early because they had the financial runway to chase other passions without worrying about next month's rent. Nepotism in hockey guarantees tryouts, draft consideration, media coverage, and perpetual second chances. What it cannot guarantee is the edge work, hockey sense, internal fire, or plain biological luck needed to stick. These 17 cases prove the NHL's meritocracy eventually wins, no matter whose jersey hangs in your childhood home. The league might open its doors wider for famous names, but it won't lower its standards to keep them inside.